Namaste, I'm Kala and you're watching Kala Artonline. So in today, which is the camera? Which side is the camera? Here. Okay, so in today's topic, I'll be teaching you all the basics of acrylics for beginners, canvas, paint and palettes, and brushes.
Apparently someone was good in their exams.
Quickly. Namaste, I'm Kala and you're watching Kala Artonline. Today's topic is a very interesting tutorial, and if you're a beginner who's just experimenting with acrylics, this is the video for you. Generally, I appreciate all beginners because picking up the colors and starting to paint is sometimes very intimidating and it can look like a very daunting task, but just follow the tips which I'm giving and things will work out more easier for you. Most of the materials in art are quite expensive, so it is very important that you use all these materials judiciously. So follow my tips and let's get started. This tutorial I have divided into 3 parts. We talk of canvas, then we talk of the paints and palette, and then we talk of the brushes. So if you're someone new and you're coming to my channel for the first time, do consider subscribing. And for the others, thank you all for watching. Let's get started with today's tutorial. So we start off with canvas. So canvas. Now canvas is available in the market in 3 types. One, here you can buy it like a book here. It comes like sheets and it is already primed for painting. So this is one. You can buy this. The second kind of canvas you get is like this, which is on a hardboard. The only thing you should remember when you buy this kind of boards is it should be primed for acrylic. Now that will be mentioned here, that it is primed for acrylics. So check this before you buy. So this is the second type of the canvas. And the third one is the stretched canvas, which is this. It is stretched on a board like this. It's a frame. So this is the third kind of canvas. Now all these canvas sheets are generally primed with gesso. So there's nothing you have to do. Now if you see the artwork behind me, of course I'll show you this complete thing later. I have used this kind of a canvas which is already mounted. So all I had to do was just put a nail and hang it on my wall. There is no difference between any of this. The only thing is this kind of thin board like this, it's easier to maintain because you can keep stacking them up if you're making a lot of artwork. And secondly, you can frame them the way you want. So this is an introduction to canvas, and now since they're already pre-primed with gesso, I generally prefer putting 2 to 3 coats more of gesso. Now let me show you how I'm going to do that. So this is the white gesso which I'll be using. So let me just show you how I'm going to prime my board once again. So this is the gesso which I'll be using. Now, even though my canvas is pre-primed, I will still be adding 2 to 3 layers of gesso. Now, why we add gesso is, it prevents the paint from getting absorbed into the canvas. So, let me just add this gesso. Now, instead of making the board look white before I start my artwork, I'll be adding a little bit of a background color. It could be yellow ochre, it could be brown. You can just select whichever color you want depending on the artwork which you have in mind. Now I am going to add just a dash of blue because my artwork which I have in mind is got a blue backdrop. So I'm just going to take a blue. Now it need not, you don't worry that it has to be really smooth and evened out. Adding a backdrop color here into the gesso will set the right tone for the artwork. So here it is. Now you have to do this when the gesso is wet. You don't allow it to dry because if it dries, then it will be like adding the acrylic paint to the canvas. So here we go. I have made the background using blue. So this is the first step which you will follow when you all are priming the canvas. So now here we have seen how to add gesso and paint to our canvas board. So the next tip which I learned from my teacher long back is to spray water at the back of the canvas. Now take a spray bottle with water. Now I'm going to spray it behind the canvas here like this. So when the canvas here is wet, what happens? You do the painting here, the canvas absorbs the paint and the water at the back, just a little bit of water, it prevents the paint from evaporating. So this is a tip which I learned long back. So use a spray bottle for wetting the area at the back, and as it dries you can continue spraying water. So now we have learned the types of canvas sheets, how to prime the canvas board, and how to also use a spray bottle to keep the back of the canvas wet. Let's move to the next topic, which is paints and palettes. Now this is called a palette. So the best tip which I can give you all is, before you start painting, separate out the warm, the cool colors and the neutral colors. When you're arranging them in the palette, squeeze them out as warm on one side, cool on one side and the neutral on the other. This makes it easier when you're using the colors. Now how to squeeze the color? If this is the tube, don't squeeze from the middle of the tube. Always from the end, very gently, you will just squeeze out the color this way. So this is one tip. Now once we have the colors and the palette ready, you must have 2 containers with water, because you will be washing the brush. The first wash will be in one container. This removes all the pigment, and then the second one for cleaning the brush thoroughly. And finally, of course, a kitchen towel should be kept handy for wiping the brushes. So this is the basic palette which you should be having when you're starting your artwork. Now let's go to the brushes. So before we start the brushes, one tip on painting. So in painting, there are 2 types you can do. One, so these I've just taken out 2 colors. When you blend 2 colors like this and start giving your strokes, this is called a loose mix, where the strokes are visible here like this. Now suppose the same thing, I take some red and I mix it thoroughly like this with the blue. So you mix a red and a blue and you'll get a purple. And then when we color, this is called a thorough mix. So a loose mix is where you don't blend in the colors. You just take 2 colors on the tip of your brush and give the strokes directly on the paper. So this is one way of painting, a loose mix where the strokes are visible, and this is a thorough mix where the strokes are blended. So now this basic is done. Let me go to the parts of a brush. So let's go to the parts of a brush. This is called the handle, and this is the ferrule. The one here, right here, this is called the heel of the brush. The middle part is called the belly, and these are the bristles, and this part is called the toe. Now it is very important you keep your brush clean and you don't keep it in the water like this for long after you do your work, because if you do this, the water from the bristles will seep into the heel and enter here to the ferrule, to this wooden part of the brush, and it will spoil the varnish here and the brush will get spoiled. So just wash the brush and immediately just soak it dry. So this is a very important tip when using the brushes. So now that we have seen the parts of the brush and that you should not be dipping the brush in water for very long, let me show you the 2 types of rinses. One is gentle rinsing, where you just rinse the brush in water gently like this, and then you can just check in the towel, but you will see here there is still color remaining. That is because if you want some paint in the brush, still you're working on it, you can just do a gentle rinse. If not, you should give a vigorous rinsing. Now this is called rigorous rinsing, where all the pigments of the brush is removed. And then, of course, you can give a rigorous rinse in the second jar of water. And then, when you check, you see there will be no paint in the brush. Of course, make sure to rinse out to dry the brush thoroughly before you store it. Now, if the paint dries on the brush, if you forget to wash your brush properly, it will become like a stick. So for that, since it's acrylic, you will have to wash it with water and soap. Now, if there is still paint on the brush and you want to remove all the paint, just dip it in water, take a small bar of soap and just, if you can notice, you will see all the color is going. Then you can just clean it in your hand and then rinse it off. So this way you're assured that there is no paint remaining in the brush. So these are a few tips and tricks for taking care of your brush. Now the most important thing which you should remember is when you are using paint, do not dip the brush in a lot of water and then use the paint. If you dip it in a lot of water and then use the paint, you make the paint watery and the polymer molecules which is there in the paint, it breaks down and you will not get a good color of the paint. So it is very important. Let me just rinse it off. So when you use water for paint, for acrylic the medium of mixing is water. So you just dip the brush in water, just a little bit, take off the excess water and then blend it with the color. And it is very important when you're blending with the color, you just take the color here a little bit, little by little and blend it with water and use. Do not dip the brush into the middle of the color here like this because there will be a lot of pigment on your brush. Just take a little from the side, blend it in and then start your artwork. So this is how you use the brush and the paints. Now my brush is loaded with paint. So let me give it a rigorous rinse so that I remove all the paints and then dry the brush. As always, if water enters the brush and goes to the wooden part, it will spoil the brush. So it's very important to maintain whether it is a brush or the palette, and you'll have to rinse the palette also the moment you finish your work. There are times because acrylic has got a plastic base, if it dries you can just peel it off. That also can be done, but make sure to maintain your palettes and brushes because as I mentioned earlier, art materials are quite expensive. So we have learned how to, what are the different types of canvas, how to take care of the paints and palettes and our brushes, and I hope you all have enjoyed today's class. So if you're someone new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, and if you really want me to explain the whole thing in Hindi again, do write in the comment section. I will do it in Hindi also. And in the next tutorial, since we already added gesso with a blue background, I'll be doing an artwork on this. Thank you all for watching. To keep a bottle of spray, it is very important to keep a spray bottle with water. Shut up and go. So,
It is very important to keep a bottle of spray. Bottles of spray.